Hello there, and welcome back to Dynamic Interactions. Tonight we will talk about our friendly neighborhood, Spider-Man. But before we do, please consider subscribing and liking the video. It really helps our channel grow. And if you like, drop a comment down below with your most interesting Spider-Man fact. Now sit back, grab your favorite blanket, adjust your pillows so you are really comfortable, and take a deep breath. Spider-Man, a revolutionary teenage hero. A teenage hero. Spider-Man was a revolutionary character when he debuted because he was a teenager who wasn't a sidekick. Before him, most teenage heroes like Robin or Bucky were just assistants to adult heroes. This distinction was a game changer for the comic book industry. Instead of being a youthful reflection of a more powerful mentor, Peter Parker was the main character. Readers followed his journey as he grappled with the same challenges they faced, from dealing with school and bullies to managing family and a social life. The added pressure of also having to be a superhero made his struggles relatable and compelling. This allowed Spider-Man to explore themes of responsibility, identity, and sacrifice from a uniquely young adult perspective, paving the way for a new generation of solo teenage heroes and resonating deeply with a young readership that had never seen themselves so authentically represented.
First appearance. Peter Parker and his alter ego Spider-Man made their first appearance in the anthology comic book Amazing Fantasy No. 15 in August 1962. This publication date is particularly notable because at the time, the series was on the brink of cancellation due to low sales. The publisher, Martin Goodman, was reluctant to introduce a new superhero, especially one as unconventional as a teen with a spider motif. Writer Stan Lee and artist Steve Ditko were given the green light to include the Spider-Man story in this final, throwaway issue, with the expectation that it wouldn't sell. Instead, the character's debut was a runaway success, becoming one of Marvel's highest-selling comics at the time. The overwhelming positive response from readers proved the character's potential, leading to the launch of the Amazing Spider-Man comic series to 7 months later. The original issue is now considered one of the most valuable comic books in history and is a landmark of the Silver Age of comic books.
With great power. Spider-Man's famous catchphrase is, "With great power, there must also come great responsibility." It was first spoken by a narrator in his debut comic, not by Uncle Ben, but it's a lesson Peter learns after his inaction leads to his uncle's death. This is one of the most significant and often misremembered details of Spider-Man's origin. The phrase, which appeared in the final narrative caption of Amazing Fantasy No. 15, solidified the core theme of the character, that his powers were a burden and a moral obligation, not just a source of personal gain. While the line wasn't spoken by Uncle Ben at first, the comics and subsequent adaptations gradually retconned the phrase to be something he said to Peter before his death. The first such direct attribution in the comics was in 1987, in Spider-Man vs. Wolverine No. 1, though an earlier rock comic album from 1972 first made the connection. This change solidified the phrase's place in the character's core mythology, making Uncle Ben's death the tragic catalyst that forces Peter to finally heed his uncle's lifelong lesson. The phrase has since become one of the most famous in all of fiction, even being cited in a U.S. Supreme Court case. The death of Gwen Stacy. In a groundbreaking and tragic storyline, Gwen Stacy, Peter's first true love interest, was killed by the Green Goblin in The Amazing Spider-Man No. 121, 1973. This event is considered a pivotal moment that ushered in the more mature Bronze Age of comic books. The death was especially shocking because it was a permanent, catastrophic failure for the hero, a scenario that was virtually unheard of for a major character's love interest. Up until this point, a hero's failure to save someone usually happened in an origin story, like Uncle Ben's death, and was a catalyst for their heroism. But here, a hero failed in the middle of his career, with a life-shattering result. The circumstances of her death were also deeply impactful. The Green Goblin threw Gwen off the George Washington Bridge, and Spider-Man, in a desperate attempt to save her, shot a web line that caught her leg. However, the sudden stop caused by the webbing snapped her neck, a detail grimly marked by a snap sound effect in the comic panel. This raised a haunting and permanent question for both Peter and the readership. Did Spider-Man, in his attempt to save her, accidentally kill the woman he loved? This moment of a hero's failure, where his powers inadvertently led to a loved one's death, cemented the idea that being Spider-Man wasn't just about fighting bad guys, but was a constant, tragic burden. The story challenged the long-held notion of good always triumphs, instead forcing the hero to confront the fact that even his best intentions could lead to devastating consequences. The death of Gwen Stacy broke the golden rule of comics that major supporting characters were essentially immortal, and ushered in a new era of storytelling where heroes could fail, and those failures had lasting, often painful repercussions. It changed the tone of not just Spider-Man comics, but the entire industry, paving the way for darker, more realistic storylines and creating a psychological depth for the characters that would define the next several decades of comic book history. The black suit. Spider-Man first acquired his black costume during the original Secret Wars comic book event in 1984. He thought it was a new alien costume, but it was actually a living symbiote that would later become Venom. This story arc was a pivotal moment in the history of the character, introducing a darker, more complex element to his mythos. During Secret Wars, which gathered heroes and villains on a cosmic battle world, Spider-Man's classic red and blue suit was shredded in a fight. Searching for a way to fix it, he found a machine he believed was a costume synthesizer. Instead, it released a black goo-like substance that bonded with him, forming a sleek, new black suit. Peter was initially thrilled with the suit's abilities. It could change its appearance at will to look like street clothes, and, most importantly, produced its own webbing, saving him from having to rely on his mechanical web shooters. However, the suit also began to subtly influence Peter's personality. He became more aggressive and short-tempered, and it would even take over his body while he slept, going on crime-fighting patrols that left him exhausted and disoriented. Alarmed by these changes, he sought help from Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four, who discovered the truth. The suit was a living, sentient being, an alien symbiote that was attempting to permanently bond with him. Using sonic vibrations from a church bell, Peter was able to separate from the symbiote, which, in its rejection and anger, would later find a new host in Eddie Brock, a disgraced journalist who also held a deep-seated grudge against Spider-Man. Together, they would become Venom, a new and terrifying adversary who not only had Peter's powers, but also knew his greatest secret, his true identity. The Black Suit storyline cemented the idea that great power can also be a corrupting influence, and that even the tools a hero uses can turn against them. It was a fan submission that was purchased by Marvel, and its evolution into a major villain is one of the most famous examples of a simple idea revolutionizing a character and an entire comic book universe.
The Clone Saga, one of the most famous and controversial Spider-Man storylines, is The Clone Saga, which ran from 1994 to 1997. It revealed that a clone of Peter Parker, Ben Reilly, was actually the original Spider-Man, and Peter was the clone. This was later reversed. While it began with an interesting premise, the saga spiraled into a convoluted and widely criticized mess that became a symbol of 90s comic book excesses. The story was initially a planned, shorter arc meant to reset Spider-Man's status quo. The idea was to have the real Peter Parker, Ben Reilly, take over, allowing for a new Spider-Man who wasn't married and had a fresh start. Ben Reilly, who had been introduced in the mid-1970s and believed to have died, was brought back to New York. He took on the identity of the Scarlet Spider, a fan favorite, and bonded with Peter, who was struggling with his impending fatherhood and the return of a man with his exact face and memories. However, due to the storyline's initial popularity and strong sales, Marvel's editorial team pressured the writers to extend it indefinitely. This led to a series of chaotic and often illogical plot twists, including multiple versions of the Jackal, the introduction of other clones, and mysterious figures like Judas Traveler, and the infamous reveal that the Peter Parker, who had been the main character for 2 decades, was a clone. This twist alienated many longtime readers who felt it invalidated years of beloved stories. The story became so tangled that even the writers struggled to keep track of the subplots. Ultimately, Marvel reversed the twist in Spider-Man number 75 with the return of the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn, who revealed he had been alive all along and was the true mastermind behind the entire scheme, having manipulated the characters to break Peter's spirit. Ben Reilly heroically sacrificed himself to save Peter, and his body disintegrated, confirming that he was in fact the clone. This final act returned Peter to his rightful place as the one and only Spider-Man, bringing a tumultuous and frustrating end to one of the most infamously drawn-out storylines in comic book history. While it introduced a compelling character in Ben Reilly and gave rise to the popular Scarlet Spider costume, the saga's legacy is often seen as a cautionary tale about stretching a story for commercial reasons at the expense of coherent storytelling.
Venom's first full appearance. While the Black Symbiote first appeared in 1984, the villain Venom, in his full form bonded with Eddie Brock, didn't make his debut until The Amazing Spider-Man number 300 in May 1988. This issue, a special 25th anniversary celebration of the series, introduced a villain who would quickly become one of Spider-Man's most iconic and enduring adversaries. The journey to this debut was a slow burn. The symbiote itself had been a major part of Spider-Man's life for years, influencing his behavior and becoming a nuisance he had to reject. Meanwhile, the human side of Venom, Eddie Brock, was being established in the background. Introduced in Web of Spider-Man number 18 as an unseen figure who pushes Peter Parker onto train tracks, the disgraced journalist was later given a full backstory. He blamed Spider-Man for ruining his career and his life after Peter exposed a false story he wrote. His deep-seated hatred for the web-slinger perfectly mirrored the symbiote's own feelings of rejection. When the symbiote, spurned by Peter, found Eddie in a church, the two merged over their shared animosity. The union created a new, terrifying entity. Venom possessed all of Spider-Man's powers, but with 2 key advantages: a massive, hulking physique and the ability to be invisible to Spider-Man's spider sense. This made Venom a uniquely formidable foe, as his attacks would come without warning, something Peter had never had to deal with. The Amazing Spider-Man number 300, written by David Michelinie and drawn by the iconic Todd McFarlane, was a masterpiece of villain introduction. It not only gave readers a full origin story, but also showcased Venom's terrifying power and personal vendetta against Spider-Man. The issue's success was immediate and overwhelming,
cementing Venom's place in the pantheon of great comic book villains and paving the way for his evolution into a complex anti-hero who would later star in his own series, Venom: Lethal Protector.
The popular character Miles Morales, a Spider-Man from an alternate universe, was introduced in Ultimate Fallout No. 4 in August 2011, after the death of his universe's Peter Parker. His creation was a landmark moment for the franchise, introducing a new and diverse hero to a world that had been dominated by the story of Peter Parker for nearly 50 years. Miles, a young Afro-Latino teenager from Brooklyn, was created by writer Brian Michael Bendis and artist Sarah Pichelli. His origin story mirrors Peter Parker's in some ways, but is also distinctly his own. He is bitten by a genetically engineered spider while visiting his uncle, Aaron Davis, who is secretly the villain, Prowler. After his universe's Spider-Man is killed in battle with the Green Goblin, a guilt-ridden Miles, who had been reluctant to use his powers, is inspired to take on the mantle. What sets Miles apart are his unique abilities. In addition to the classic powers of wall crawling and a spider sense, he also possesses a Venom Strike, an electrical energy burst that can incapacitate opponents, and the ability to camouflage himself to become invisible. These powers, combined with his distinct personality, a mix of teenage anxiety and a genuine desire to do good, made him instantly relatable and a hit with readers. Miles quickly became a fan favorite, leading to his own ongoing series. He has since been integrated into the mainstream Marvel Comics universe and has been the star of 2 Academy Award-winning animated films, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. His popularity is a testament to the enduring appeal of the Spider-Man concept and the importance of creating characters that reflect the diversity of the modern world. Miles Morales isn't just a different version of Spider-Man. He represents a new generation of heroes, and his story proves that anyone can wear the mask.
Secret identity revealed. Peter Parker's secret identity has been revealed to many characters over the years, but the most famous and impactful instance was when he unmasked on national television in Civil War No. 2 in 2006. This decision, made at the urging of Tony Stark, was an act of public solidarity with the Superhuman Registration Act, which mandated that all superpowered individuals register their identities with the government. For a character whose central conflict had always been the protection of his loved ones, this was a radical and shocking change to the status quo. The consequences were immediate and catastrophic. Initially, Peter and his family, Aunt May and Mary Jane, were living in Stark Tower, where they were protected. However, as Peter became disillusioned with Stark and the pro-registration side, he switched to Captain America's underground resistance. This move made him a fugitive and left his family completely exposed. The ultimate price was paid when a hitman hired by the Kingpin, who now knew Peter's identity, attempted to assassinate him, but shot and critically wounded Aunt May instead. This tragic event set the stage for one of the most controversial and widely debated storylines in Spider-Man's history, One More Day. Faced with the imminent death of his beloved aunt, Peter exhausted all his resources from science to magic in a desperate attempt to save her. When all else failed, he was visited by the demon Mephisto, who offered him a Faustian bargain. He would save Aunt May's life in exchange for erasing Peter and Mary Jane's marriage from history. As part of the deal, Mephisto also agreed to restore Peter's secret identity, erasing the public's knowledge of him as Spider-Man. This controversial retcon reset the character's life, reverting him to a single, struggling hero and putting the genie of his secret identity back in the bottle, but at a profound and lasting personal cost.
The Iron Spider. Peter Parker's Iron Spider suit, which he wore during the Civil War comic book event, was gifted to him by Tony Stark. It had a wide array of advanced features and was a symbol of his alignment with the pro-registration side. The suit was presented in Amazing Spider-Man number 529 and became a key part of his arsenal as he publicly supported the Superhuman Registration Act. The armor was a radical departure from Spider-Man's traditional cloth costume. It was made of a flexible, liquid metal material and was equipped with a variety of high-tech features, including enhanced optics, advanced communications, and built-in web shooters. Its most distinctive feature was the 3 mechanical arms, or Waldos, that could extend from its back, giving Peter an extra layer of defense and a tactical advantage in combat. The suit also had a self-heating and self-cooling system, as well as a short-range glider capability. It was, in many ways, an upgrade that made him a more formidable and technologically advanced hero. However, the suit's advanced nature also came with a heavy symbolic burden. The red and gold color scheme intentionally evoked Iron Man's armor, signaling to the public and other heroes that Spider-Man was now on Tony Stark's side of the ideological war. As the conflict escalated and Peter became increasingly disillusioned with the Registration Act and Tony's methods, he grew to resent the suit as a cage, not a costume. The final straw came when Stark used the armor to control and track Peter, forcing him to abandon the suit in Civil War number 5. He tore it off in a moment of defiance, signaling his full defection to Captain America's resistance, and returned to his classic self-made costume, which was a clear statement that he was no longer a pawn in anyone else's war. The suit would later be used by other characters, but its brief time with Peter Parker remains a powerful symbol of his moral and personal struggle during the Civil War storyline.
The Master Planner arc. In Amazing Spider-Man number 31 through 33, Stan Lee and Steve Ditko crafted a story where Spider-Man, battling Dr. Octopus, who had taken the guise of the Master Planner, is trapped under tons of heavy machinery. The scene of him lifting himself out of the rubble through sheer will has become one of the most famous and iconic moments in comic book history, a definitive visual representation of the character's indomitable spirit. The storyline, titled If This Be My Destiny, put Peter Parker at his lowest point. Aunt May was gravely ill with a rare blood disease, and the only hope for her survival was an obscure serum. The Master Planner, a mysterious new villain, had obtained the necessary isotope, forcing Peter to confront him. The climax of the saga saw Spider-Man cornering the Master Planner in his hidden base, only for the ceiling to collapse, trapping him under an enormous amount of fallen wreckage. The Master Planner, revealed to be Dr. Octopus, escaped, leaving Peter to die as water began to flood the room. What makes the moment so powerful is not just the physical struggle, but the emotional and mental one. As Peter lies helpless, he is consumed by despair. He thinks of Aunt May's illness, the life he could be living, and the hopelessness of his situation. However, he then forces himself to remember his core principle, his great responsibility. The panel shows a close-up of his face, gritting his teeth, as he tells himself, I've got to break out, I've got to. He uses his fear, pain, and love for his aunt as fuel, pushing past his human limits and summoning a heroic strength he didn't know he had. The final panel of him emerging from the rubble with a triumphant cry is an unforgettable image of a hero's unwavering resolve. This scene cemented Spider-Man's identity not just as a powerful superhuman, but as a hero defined by his sheer force of will, making it a cornerstone of his character and a timeless example of triumph against all odds in comic book fiction.
His first job. Peter Parker's first job after becoming Spider-Man was a freelance photographer for the Daily Bugle, where he sold pictures of himself in costume to a very skeptical and often critical J. Jonah Jameson. This dynamic, which began in The Amazing Spider-Man number 1, 1963, became one of the most enduring and comedic elements of the series, creating a perfect source of irony and conflict for the hero. The relationship was a stroke of creative genius by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. Desperate for money to support himself and his frail Aunt May, Peter stumbled upon the idea of taking pictures of Spider-Man in action. The only publisher interested was the cantankerous, cigar-chomping J. Jonah Jameson, the publisher of the Daily Bugle. Jameson, who publicly despises Spider-Man and writes scathing editorials calling him a menace and a fraud, was willing to pay a premium for photos that could be used to prove his point. Peter, needing the cash, was more than happy to supply them, creating a secret, mutually beneficial, if incredibly twisted, arrangement. This setup puts Peter in a constant state of internal conflict. He is simultaneously a struggling young hero trying to do the right thing and the primary source of the propaganda being used to vilify him. He has to balance his heroism with his need to get the perfect shot for a man who hates him, often having to fight a villain with one hand while trying to operate his camera with the other. The irony of the situation is the central gag and the core of their iconic relationship. Jameson, the man who spends his life trying to unmask Spider-Man, is unknowingly employing him and giving him the funds to continue his career as a hero. Their rivalry, fueled by misunderstanding and a shared but secret connection, make their scenes some of the most memorable in the history of the comic, showcasing a unique and essential piece of Peter Parker's life.
The Sinister Six. One of Spider-Man's oldest and most iconic villain teams is the Sinister Six. The original lineup, which debuted in The Amazing Spider-Man Annual #1 in 1964, included Dr. Octopus, Electro, Kraven the Hunter, Mysterio, Sandman, and the Vulture. The formation of this group was a landmark moment, as it marked the first time that several of Spider-Man's most formidable foes banded together with the singular goal of destroying him. The team was orchestrated by Dr. Octopus, who had grown weary of his and his colleagues' individual defeats at the hands of Spider-Man. He contacted the other 5 villains, each of whom had also been humbled by the web-slinger. His plan was simple, but brilliant. Instead of all 6 of them attacking at once, which he correctly predicted would allow Spider-Man to escape, they would each take a turn battling him in a separate, isolated location. The gauntlet-style attack was designed to wear the hero down physically and mentally, with the final villain having the advantage of fighting an exhausted Spider-Man. The strategy proved to be an effective one. Spider-Man, in his classic fashion, managed to overcome each of them, but not without significant effort and a few close calls. He used his intelligence and wit to defeat each member individually, for example, using a vacuum cleaner to suck up Sandman and a specialized device to disrupt Mysterio's illusions. The annual was a huge success, solidifying the idea of supervillain teams as a legitimate and persistent threat. The Sinister Six have become a recurring thorn in Spider-Man's side, with the roster often changing over the years to include other adversaries like Hobgoblin, Shocker, or Rhino. The group has since been featured in countless comics, video games, animated series, and films, cementing their place as one of the most beloved and recognizable villainous teams in all of comic book history.
He's been an Avenger. Throughout his history, Spider-Man has been a member of numerous superhero teams, most notably the Avengers and the Fantastic Four. While often a solo act, his time with these teams marked significant chapters in his life, giving him a level of legitimacy he had long been denied, and expanding his role from a street-level hero to a global defender. His first major long-term membership was with the New Avengers, a team he joined in the aftermath of the Avengers Disassembled storyline. This was a particularly significant development, as for decades, the Avengers had often been portrayed as a group of more respectable heroes who looked down on the often flawed, working-class Spider-Man. With this new iteration of the team, which included the likes of Captain America, Iron Man, and Wolverine, Spider-Man became a core member, participating in major crossover events like Civil War and the Secret Invasion storyline. His presence on the team brought a much-needed dose of street-level perspective and humor to the often serious group, while also providing him with powerful allies and resources he never had before. He also had a notable tenure with the Fantastic Four. Following the death of his close friend, the Human Torch, Johnny Storm, Spider-Man was invited to take his place on the team, which had renamed itself the Future Foundation. His time with the group provided him with a new family of sorts and allowed him to use his scientific genius in a way he couldn't as a lone hero. This temporary but impactful role showed that he was a vital part of the larger superhero community and a respected peer of some of the most intelligent and powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe. His time with these teams cemented the fact that while he may be your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, his great responsibility extends far beyond the streets of New York City.